What is up? What is up? Give me a Lima Charlie if y'all can hear me loud and clear, man. What is the damn deal? Hopefully everybody's having a good day, having a good time, all of that good stuff. It's an interesting one. It's an interesting one. So they say I do my man cave Mondays, which is later on tonight. And somebody commented on the video earlier and was like, X, are you gonna cover Benchmade suing Montana Knife Company? I was like, Raggy? What are you talking about? What? So of course, my little ears got to moving and my research chop started going. And lo and behold, Benchmade did sue Montana Knife Company. And I'm just going to give you the bluff. They got freaking bodied on those boys, sir. They got bodied. Okay? Ridiculousness, man. It's just... Make sure you hit that like button, man. This is a lot of research went into this. I spent the last couple of hours researching to see what is going on and see what happened. Why did it start? And I got some receipts for that. As well, man. We already got a mix of folks up in the building. First off, man, I thank the folks that are already kicking the door in. A lot of places you can be. But you're here right now, and I appreciate that type of stuff. Mike and Ike's is already in the building, sir. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for being a goddamn member. We appreciate that, man. Get you here. I don't know why the comment is so small, but we do appreciate you being here, man. We appreciate that. We got Metro is here as well. Metro kicked the door in. He says, am I late? No, you're here, man. You're good to go. You're good to go. Birdman is here. What up, man? Thanks for stopping by. David Hurst, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for being a goddamn member. We appreciate that, man. Maxwell is wondering, nah, we're getting to start so much research, so many notes, and apparently Benchmade is a litigious company. They like to get into legal action pretty often. And I was like, let me make sure I got my damn ducks in a row. You know what I'm saying? Tater Nom, thanks for stopping by. Hopefully everything is well with you as well. What's good, X? Hey, what's going on, Kevin? Thanks for kicking the door in. Let me know where y'all are at, what you got in your pockets today. We're going to talk about, are you carrying a Benchmade in your pockets today? Because today might not be one of those days. Today might not be one of those days, man. So, yeah, make sure you smash that like button. We appreciate that. Mark is saying that I'm here. True Budget EDC, thank you for stopping by. Thanks for being a goddamn member. We appreciate that, man. Greetings from Arizona, which is well appreciated as well. Listen, all sorts of stuff going on, man. All sorts of stuff going on. So Benchmade decided that they were going to sue Montana Knife Company. It's an interesting thing. I'm going to dive into what happened and all of that good stuff. Before I do all of that, let me go ahead and get my little energy up, man. I'm going to have a Ghost Energy drink, sweet as fish. Mainly because it was a lot of research into this and you know what I'm saying, I want to make sure I keep my ducks in a row. Got to keep those ducks in a row. Benchmade mini bug out is in the pocket. I don't know, man. I don't know. Maybe you'll keep them in the pocket. We'll see. We shall see, because it's an interesting case for the type of stuff that they had in their pockets and all of that. So first off, Benchmade, let's talk about the history of Benchmade, and we're going to jump into this case overall. So Benchmade was founded in 1979. They were mostly known for their balisong knives. That's what they knew for. They became incorporated. They've always been a private company. They're not publicly traded. I thought that eventually they would become that, especially the way that they move. They are the largest knife company in America according to statistics from 2022. Now, as that updates, we'll see how that goes, but that's the last update that I saw. They are in Oregon City, Oregon. So these are just kind of like, they employ over 400 employees, and keep that fact in mind. This case has to do with an employee. That might be something, that a reason why all this stuff kind of went down. Okay, so that's something to think about. Now let's talk about the good things that Benchmade has on the table, the good things that they bring to the table, a lot of things that people like about them. So wrong button. So they're American made knives for the most part. Okay, I don't know any knife that's in their lineup that's made overseas. They use a lot of American made steel. They had some knives that weren't American made, but for the most part it's American made everything. They have this thing called a life sharp warranty. They also have very low cost for non-warranty types of services. For instance, I just sent my Benchmade cigar cutter back to them to get it sharpened and to get them, I think I'm missing a couple internal parts or whatever, and I didn't put it together correctly. I sent it off to Benchmade. Now they are charging $20, which is, some people don't even make $20 an hour. They literally emailed me and said, hey, thank you for choosing Benchmade. We need to charge you $20 to reassemble your knife correctly. And as long as you authorize that charge, your warranty will continue. Your lifetime warranty will continue. Now, if I compare that to other companies, like for instance, Tactile Knife, I've taken a knife into Tactile for a service. They charge me $5 to reassemble and to do some stuff. So, $20, whatever. But, they have this Life Sharp thing, this lifetime warranty. And they have a variety of knives, kitchen knives, hunting knives. They just started this new water series, which is designed for fishing and taking your knife into the water, and made with Magna Cut and all that other type of stuff. That's some of the good stuff when it comes to Benchmade, but we got to talk about the bad. It's not all good. Okay, we got to talk about the bad. First off, there's been some quality control issues when it comes to Benchmade. This is anecdotal. This is not over. For them to call themselves Benchmade, you would believe that every single knife is looked at a bench. And I don't know if there's evidence of that, because you can see plenty of videos on the internet. I've had some issues as well. Knives creaking when you open them. Knives not centered when they are received in. That's an issue. Some knives overly oiled or greased or whatever the hell they're using off of the factory floor. In 2019, according to Breitbart, they saw Benchmade cut up a bunch of guns on behalf of the Oregon City Police Department. Now, if you view this in a vacuum, you can see this one of two ways. Either one, Benchmade was supporting local police by cutting up knives, right? So the local police had confiscated all these guns. Rather, they were going to be destroyed anyways. These came from bad guys. Benchmade has the tools to cut up guns. They cut them up. Now, I do believe that Oregon City Police Department was a bunch of dummies to post that on Instagram to start a controversy. But that's one way you can view that if you're looking at this in a vacuum. If you're looking at this in another way, you can look at it as, the Benchmade is anti-Second Amendment. You have to just decide which one you are. And I'm going to give you some more facts to maybe help you come to that conclusion. Okay, so they did that. And they cut up the guns for the local police department. Another thing that they did is, according to opensource.com can look up who has donated what money. If you donate directly to a political campaign, then we can look it up. I've donated to both Republicans and Democrats and independents. I've voted for Republicans and Democrats all over. I see myself as a true independent, and I've given money to both. But I'm not a corporation. I'm a guy on the internet, right? Benchmade has donated, according to opensource.com, to both Republicans and Democrats, but they've donated over $30,000 to Democrats and only $3,000 to Republicans. They've donated over $30,000 to Democrats in multiple states. Mind you, Benchmade is primarily in Oregon City, Oregon. They're making donations in New Mexico and Colorado in their own state to Democrats. Whereas for Republicans, they only made donations in Oregon, and I think maybe, I can't remember if it was New Mexico, but it was only 2 states. That's another fact just for something you to think about, okay? This is open source records. Another thing about Benchmade is in 2021, they were fined. Now, this is the ugly part, okay? They were fined $13,400 for a 2019 chemical spill. So in 2021, after a 2-year investigation, they were fined by like the Oregon Waste, whatever they call themselves. Basically, Benchmade had a spill of hazardous waste of toxic chromium. Chromium's is used to make a lot of sockets, made to like ratchets, other tools, and also apparently somewhere within Benchmade's process, they use chromium for whatever, I guess the blade steel or whatever. And so they had a spill in a local creek. They didn't immediately clean it. They were hit with a $13,400 fine. That's pretty ugly. Okay, that's pretty ugly. And another thing is their pricing. I think this is pretty ugly. Their pricing's all over the place. Okay, I got a Benchmade Griptilian, mini Griptilian 2 years ago on base for $89, S30V steel. I think that's a freaking steal of a deal. All right. And you look at some recent knives, whereas you may want to get yourself a Benchmade Narrows is over $500. Maybe you can get it on sale for $490. I'm like, these prices are out of this world. Now, their new water series, they're trying to bring the price down with a lower grade of scale, but you're getting Magna Cut still. But we're not going to go down that road. Pricing all over the place. That's an issue. And the biggest thing for me personally, this is something that could affect me. It didn't affect me, but it could have affected you. In December 2018, Benchmade came out and admitted that they had a breach of their website, and lots of their customers' information, such as emails and addresses and credit card numbers, were all hacked. It was all a breach. They had to shut their website down. They had to notify people. That's something. So if you bought something directly from their website before 2018, that's something you got to think about. So they got some good, they got some bad, they got some ugly, but they are a litigious company. Litigious meaning they are been involved in a whole lot of lawsuits, guys. They've been involved in a freaking ton of lawsuits, over a dozen, according to my research. They have sued companies such as Gerber. They've sued Spyderco. They've sued Hogue. They've sued individuals. They've sued all sorts of folks. They've also been sued by a number of companies. Spyderco has sued them. This is all on, just research I've done. I look at different court dockets and stuff like that. And just to give you a background of like where I get all this information from. So my background is I'm an analyst by trade, but I used to teach at Texas A&M School of Law. So the lawyers that I used to teach also showed me how to research cases, how to find cases. That's how I have a copy of this lawsuit. I have a copy of the letters from the lawsuit. I have a copy of stuff from the lawyers. This, in my opinion, is some juicy freaking stuff. Make sure you hit that goddamn like button, man. Make sure you hit that shit, okay? They've sued a whole lot of people in multiple states, Colorado, their own state of Oregon. They've done a lot of lawsuits. And you know how many times that Montana Knife Company has been in civil actions, at least at the federal level? You know how many times? One time. And that one time came from Benchmade Knife Company. Gots to be more careful. It's an interesting thing that the fact that Benchmade has been in all sorts of civil actions, whether they initiated them or someone else. Montana Knife Company has been in one of these situations. It did not take me long to research it, and it seems like they were drugged into this situation. So someone commented on one of my videos, and they said, hey, X, Montana Knife Company just had Donald Trump Jr. on their podcast, and they mentioned that they were being sued. And I was like, what? Raggy? What are you talking about? I didn't hear anything about this. Now, I'm not coming at this in the world of politics, but this story collides with politics. I'm going to give you facts of what happened, and you guys come up with your own decision. So I'm sitting there, I'm watching the podcast, and I hear this.
It's just sort of unique. So, we have to think about it.
I'm experiencing it in just the tiniest way because, and I haven't really talked much about it publicly, but I will be. But like Benchmade is suing us right now, and my reaction to it is, bring it on, motherfuckers.
Oh my God! He said, "Bring it on, mofo's." He said he is here for it. Did I misunderstand that? Was that something that I misunderstood? I don't think I misunderstood that. I think it was pretty freaking clear as day. He said, bring it on. Do I need to see the shit again? I mean, like,
I guess we had the fights thing. If you had the flight thing, it'd be problematic. Like we joke. I don't know.
It's unbelievable.
I mean, like, do
crush him with that, but I can't imagine, your day. Like,
bro, I don't understand.
I have a really shitty existence. It would be, every day would be
Let me hear this again.
And so, it's just sort of unique. So, we have to think about it.
I'm experiencing it in just the tiniest way because, and I haven't really talked much about it publicly, but I will be. But like Benchmade is suing us right now, and my reaction to it is, bring it on, motherfucker.
Hold on, he said, bring it on, mother. I don't think I misunderstood that. Josh Smith is dropping his goddamn balls on this thing, boy. He's not playing around. Josh Smith, a co-founder of Montana Knife Company, is a master blade smith. He has sharpened one of my knives. He's a cool guy. I'm just saying. Okay? Let me see what else he said.
I can't wait to, crush him with that. But I can't imagine, your dad's deal.
Bro, he cannot wait to crush him with that. And I will say, in my opinion, Benchmade got freaking bodied after this lawsuit. They got bodied after this lawsuit. They come through, they decide that they're going to file a lawsuit against Montana Knife Company comes through and decides that they're going to defend themselves. This just seems like it was an interesting fact, something that they came through. They made this lawsuit, and I'm not sure if it was a freaking good idea. I'm not sure if it was a good idea overall. I have the legal document itself. We're going to take a look at this, guys. I have the actual document itself. We're going to take a look at this, and I really want to just dive into this very quickly because I think it's a very interesting case that Benchmade decided to sue Montana Knife Company in the United States District Court of Oregon. Now, everything that I'm presenting on here, YouTube, this is all public record. So when you see emails and names and phone numbers, I'm not doxing anyone. All this, I literally paid 10 cents for per page, 10 cents per page, and I downloaded the stuff. Okay. So anyone can do the same thing right now if you know how to log into these places and get it. So I just wanted to put that out there before I begin. They decided to come at them. So this is with the overall point of this lawsuit. The overall point of this lawsuit is Benchmade sued Montana Knife Company over concerns of a confidentiality agreement on their trade secrets over an employee. All right, so I'm just trying to read in between the lines. It seems as if Benchmade was very concerned, upset, whatever the case you want to use, that Montana Knife Company may or may not have allegedly got trade secrets from an employee. I don't know if I see it that way. They filed this lawsuit on March 15, 2024, less than 2 Fridays ago, as they would say on Friday. Okay, less than 2 months ago. Oh no, less than 3 months ago. So April, May. No, yeah, less than 2 months ago. Yeah, April, May. So this is Benchmade Knife Company, Benchmade Knife Company versus Montana Knife Company, and it is for intentional interference with economical relations in civil conspiracy. So they say. They demanded a jury trial, and because of the amount that they believed that it was worth, it had to go to district court instead of circuit court. This is pretty crazy. So the parties, plaintiff Benchmade is an Oregon corporation and organized and existing under the laws of Oregon. And I'm gonna try to skip any parts that are a little bit boring, but I want to read through this because I think it's pretty interesting. Defendant MKC is a Montana corporation, and they put their address there as well. Then they talk about the jurisdiction. They basically explain why it's fit for them to sue them in Oregon and not sue them in Montana. Okay, that's what this part is talking about. They also talk about it exceeds. They believe that the value of this lawsuit is going to be more than $75,000. So therefore, they have to file in this specific court. All right. Now, I'm not a lawyer. It's just me reading and researching. If anybody is a lawyer in the chat, if I get anything wrong in the chat, absolutely feel free to correct me. Facts in background. Benchmade is an industry leader. Now, this is all them freaking fluffing their own shit. Okay, this is a filing from their lawyer to the court. All right. So when I read through this stuff, I'm not reading it as Marine X. I'm reading it what they are telling the court about themselves. Okay, they're stroking their own ego. Benchmade is an industry leader in design, in manufacturing, marketing, and sale of knives, cutters, and cutting tools. Benchmade has been manufacturing, marketing, and selling superior quality knives in the U.S. for over 30 years. As a result, Benchmade and its products have become a benchmark for innovation and quality of life. So they're trying to say that because we've been selling knives for so long, we're now a benchmark, right? We're now a benchmark. People, you know, I'm assuming they're alluding to people emulate, want to be like them. Benchmade efforts have been widely recognized in industry, and then they freaking tugged their own chain by naming a bunch of awards that they won. They also say that Benchmade is a leading innovator of the field of knives with dozens of issued patents. We've all heard of the Axis lock. I didn't know they had dozens of issued patents, but we've heard of the Axis lock, right? That's their style of the crossbar lock. All sorts of companies have tried to emulate that. Benchmade have sued a bunch of companies for copyright infringement or for patent infringement. These patents cover knife mechanisms, blade geometries, handle geometry, safety mechanisms, latches, sheaths, and more. Benchmade is continuously innovating new products, manufacturing techniques, and more. At least 40 of Benchmade knife product families are covered by one or more of these pending U.S. patent applications. They're meaning to say we ain't playing. This is not our first rodeo. Okay. What they're saying is this is not our first rodeo. We have a lot of patents. Therefore, we're defensive about our shit. That's what they're saying, in my opinion. Paragraph 9, it says Benchmade has developed a substantial trade secret and otherwise confidential information. Benchmade expands substantial financial and human resources to develop its trade secret and other confidential information, which cannot easily be acquired and replicated by its competitors. Y'all can't copy us that easy. Y'all can't get like us. We spend bread on this. You hear me? That's what they're trying to say. All right. And so they say the Benchmade takes reasonable efforts to maintain its the secrecy of its trade secrets and other confidential information. So they're just saying that this is what they do. This is how much they spend. This is the efforts that they go. And, you know, they're making an effort to try to actually hold on to these secrets. Paragraph 10 says Benchmade incorporates privacy and security of its confidential information at physical infrastructure level, meaning the physical overhead, the physical building, right? Cheeks in the seats, including locks on doors, badge access requirements for all buildings, different levels of access for different levels of employees, such that many employees cannot go into sensitive areas. So some employees can't even go to other areas, which is so interesting. I've done 2 knife tours of different facilities and I was just walking all over the place. I'll give you an example. I went to Tactile Knife Co. Not only did I do a full tour of Tactile Knife Co. in Tactile Turn, they told me to film everything. They took me into every room. I was dapping people up. They let me walk around by myself. I'm assuming Tactile got some patents and shit, but they are not. They're not. Listen, they are not like men. You would be led to believe that Benchmade was a publicly traded company and their shareholders, you know what I'm saying, their shareholders would be butthurt over this stuff. Benchmade's facilities have a certain areas with a lock and key. The company keeps logs of those who have master keys. Paragraph 11, the company maintains a comprehensive security camera system which monitors and records all activities on campus. I don't know if it's closed circuit. I don't know if it's loaded to the internet, but they say they got cameras on this bitch. It's cameras. Visitors to the building are required to sign and accept and agree to a visitor policy, and they have to sign a non-disclosure agreement. They also say when visitors are accepted, and they talk about that, all of employees are required to sign agreements at the commencement of their employment, which require that they follow all Benchmade policies and rules, including the rules and policies regarding trade secrets and intellectual property, IP. So they're saying that not only when you come here, you got to sign and maybe possibly sign an NDA, but when you get hired here, you have to sign an NDA. Interesting. Benchmade trade secrets and other proprietary and confidential information is kept private and is not published in any way outside a Benchmade. You can't Google this shit. You can't just go look it up. There's no Dewey Decimal System at a library. It is for them. Photography is not allowed on the factory floor, and there are signs on windows and over the factory floor informing viewers that photography is not allowed. Now, listen, I get it. Y'all been in this game for a while. It's just so weird to me that some of your competitors not only are letting us on the floor, they're letting YouTubers like me on the floor, just folks off the public. And it's just like y'all are secretive about your stuff. I get it. Benchmade also has a robust IT system designed to ensure the security of its sensitive files. For example, all USB activities on the company's computers are logged. Same thing with the company that I work for. Every time you stick something into the computer knows what you stuck in it. It will block it if it needs to, all that type of stuff. Okay. And they should have an IT system like that because they just got all that shit admitted by them. That hack that happened in 2018, that's an issue, right? So Benchmade employs role-based access control systems, and then they talk about VPN and they talk about all this other stuff. Then they give a copy of their confidentiality agreement. In 2015, an unnamed co-conspirator, this is a strong word. Co-conspirator, huh? An unnamed co-conspirator was hired by Benchmade in its executive as a condition of his employment, a non-compete, We're going to talk more about that later. Non-solicitation and confidentiality arbitration agreement, here as known as a confidentiality agreement, was entered into and engaged by the business of manufacturing, marketing, and selling of knives. The confidentiality agreement has the following non-competition clause, and then they put their non-compete in here, right, which talks about during the term of employment for the period of 2 years after termination of this agreement, for any reason, the employee shall not within the territory or directly indirectly engage in competitive business activity, meaning you can't go work for another knife company. Okay, right? That's what their non-compete attempts to do. Then they define what a territory is. They define territory as America. They define territory as America, and they go a little bit further into that, right? They also say that Benchmade currently and regularly sells knives in Montana, so thus Montana is a part of the territory. The non-competition clause defines directly or indirectly to perform services as an act to capacity, blah, blah, blah. What they're basically saying is they define what it means to go work for another company or perform as an independent contractor, right? Give consulting to another company. So they go through and they define all these different things on non-uses, non-disclosure. They talk about the restriction of copying. You can't copy stuff and leave Benchmade. Everything that you make at Benchmade belongs to Benchmade. Return of materials, if they give you all that type of stuff, computers, stuff like that, you have to return it back to them if they issue you a cell phone, etc., etc. So it's a pretty standard confidentiality agreement. I had to sign one, in the past. I had to sign a non-compete in the past. And this is just them trying to explain what this employee signed, right? So then they go and define confidential information, means all data or know-how. How do they make something? The data that goes into it, which has a value to Benchmade. Now, value to Benchmade is a little, if I was in this agreement, I would have my lawyer argue, like, what the hell does that mean? Value 1 cent, or does it have to have a small amount of money or whatever? Benchmade knife customers, etc., trade secrets, and so forth and so on. So the confidentiality agreement, and I'm starting on paragraph 28. The confidentiality agreement continues to be in full force in effect. Unnamed co-conspirator access to the Benchmade confidential information. So they go through and they explain what this person signed. Now they're going to go through and they try to talk about the conspiracy. This is just so weird to me. Okay. This is so weird to me. All right. We're going to talk about the conspiracy here in a second, because some of y'all are talking about the issues that you've had with Benchmade in the past. Everyone has the access log better than Benchmade. Listen, I just talked about this company not too long ago. The Stidivin, or whatever they call themselves. The couple of Benchmates I've had questionable heat treatment, and that was years ago, says Stone Hands. David says data loss prevention is a big thing for everyone these days. I totally agree with that. And Justin A says S30V has been the chippiest blade I've used, and then it's a complete joke. So once you get past that factory edge and working edge, you have issues with the actual blade itself. And me, Nas, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for being a goddamn member. We appreciate that, man. People have issues with Benchmade. So jumping back into this, we see that they talk about this unnamed co-conspirator. The unnamed co-conspirator had a role that required him to have access to Benchmade's cutting-edge intellectual property, including confidential and trade secret information, including some of Benchmade's most sensitive documents that could have been used by its competitors to provide an unfair advance in terms of competing with the Benchmades. Now, remember, they said they hired this employee, I think in 2015? I may have got the date wrong, but I think it's 2015. And they said he was hired by the executive. That leads me to believe this was not someone doing Cerakoting. This was not someone at the bench checking pocket clips. This was someone higher up. It could have been a designer. It could have been a CEO, a COO. It could have been all sorts of different roles. And what they're saying is this person had access to documents that can be used by their competitors for unfair advance in terms of competing with Benchmades. Now, they can't say unfair advantage, because that's what, that's a government term, but they can say unfair advance in terms of competing with Benchmade, giving other companies a head up on what Benchmade plans to do. And they would say that these companies would not have years of investing in relationship development negotiations, market knowledge. They can just get any of it because this person has access to it. Without access to such confidential and proprietary information, a company that wanted to develop products to compete with Benchmade would have to invest enormous amount of time. They're kind of shitting on Montana Knife Company a little bit on this line, right? Is, you know, if we think about this another way, but for having access to this information, you would have to research and use your own money and use your own time and your own effort for years and years like we did. Then they jump into the defendant's conspiracy, and we're almost done with the document itself. Upon information and belief. Now, I don't know what information or belief, but they're going to explain a little bit here. I was looking for attachments, and I didn't really see it. Okay, and that's where we're going to see where Montana Knife Company comes at them. They even use some of Donald Trump's old lawyers, and we'll talk about that as well. Montana Knife Company was not here to play. You hear me? So, unnamed co-conspirator decided to leave Benchmade in the fall of 2023. Therefore, the unnamed co-conspirator and Montana Knife Company entered into a conspiracy to breach unnamed co-conspirator's fiduciary duties to his non-compete agreement with Benchmade. They just jump right to the goddamn fact, bro. They said he left in fall of 2023. Thereafter, the conspirator in Montana Knife Company entered into a conspiracy to breach his fiduciary duties, meaning the duties that he signed by signing that document and his duties to Benchmade. Specifically, Montana Knife Company and the unnamed co-conspirator agreed that the unnamed co-conspirator would submit his resignation to Benchmade, would thereafter take on new employment for a 1-year period of time, and would then join Montana Knife Company after that 1-year period. Defendant conspired with unnamed co-conspirator to effectuate this plan, notwithstanding that unnamed co-conspirator non-compete agreement with Benchmade. Limited his ability to engage with the competitive business activity within the territory for 2 years. What they're basically saying in a wordy way is Montana Knife Company convinced its employees to go get employment elsewhere for a year and then come on back to us and work for us. And they're saying that they conspired to get him to quit his job and to come over to Montana Knife Company. Now, where did they get this from? I don't know. I was looking for like a sworn affidavit. I was looking for something. I didn't see it. Maybe I missed it. Okay. Then they say unnamed co-conspirator has been recruited by Montana Knife Company to join its executive team, continuing to perform essentially the same functions he performs at Benchmade. They are not only did they convince him to quit, but now he's an executive over at MKC. What? Really? Okay. We shall see. On February 26th, the unnamed co-conspirator gave notice to Benchmade that he would be leaving, and contrary to his non-compete agreement, starting at MKC within a year. Wow. Unnamed co-conspirator has knowledge of substantial trade secret and other Benchmade confidential information, which is precisely the type of information that the confidential agreement and its 2-year non-compete are meant to protect against. Upon information and belief, unnamed co-conspirator intends to use the trade secret and confidential information for the benefit of Montana Knife Company. They've laid out what they believe has happened. Okay. They've laid out what they believe has happened. Now I'm looking for some. I read that whole little section. I did not see attachment 1. I did not see C. I didn't see it. Maybe I missed it. Okay. But I went on the website, paid my little money, downloaded these documents. I saw no such attachments of affidavits. Maybe I missed it. And I'm going to try to reach out to the lawyers for Montana Knife Company. I'm going to try to reach out to, some actual, the Montana Knife Company themselves. I'm going to see if I can do more research. Maybe I missed some stuff, but this is the complaint that they filed, right? So this is what they're asking for. So first, claim of relief. They have 2 different claims of relief. Okay. They're saying that they want a claim of relief for intentional interference with contractual relations. Benchmade incorporates by reference here as paragraphs 1 through 34 as listed above. We just read through that, but they didn't incorporate an affidavit. I'm looking for that. Where'd they get this information from? That's what I'm wondering about. Okay. At all times relevant to this action, Benchmade has made a valid contractual agreement with the unnamed co-conspirator in the form of an agreement, a confidentiality agreement, right? Montana Knife Company was not a party to that relationship. Unnamed co-conspirator owed Benchmade a fiduciary duty of loyalty while he was employed at Benchmade. A fiduciary meaning like a written. You owe us loyalty because you wrote you would give us loyalty. Paragraph 39, upon information and belief, Montana Knife Company was aware of non-compete clause in the confidential agreement and was specifically aware of the 2-year probation on unnamed co-conspirators' ability to engage in a competitive business activity within the territory of the United States. And he worked over there anyway. And further, knew that this clause prohibited unnamed co-conspirator from working for Montana Knife Company. MKC knew or reasonably ought to have known that any breach of the unnamed co-conspirators confidential agreement would be cause Benchmade to suffer irreparable harm. That is a freaking term of money right there. When you see folks using irreparable harm, they're coming at your pockets. They're coming at your pockets. The whole purpose of using language like that. By permitting and encouraging or ratifying unnamed co-conspirators' breach of his contractual obligations to Benchmade, by agreeing to hire him to work for MKC after only 1 year, MKC intentionally interfered with Benchmade contractual relations with this unnamed co-conspirator. What? Why do you just sue the unnamed co-conspirator? I didn't see at the top of this agreement Benchmade versus MKC versus unnamed co-conspirator. Y'all went right for MKC. Why didn't you just sue the unnamed co-conspirator? He's the one you had the relationship with, in my opinion. This is my opinion now. I'm under confidentiality agreements with previous companies I've worked for. If I go get a job with one of their competitors, I would expect them to sue me unless, they could prove that company was able to convince me to quit or something like that. They're making some targeted allegations in this freaking document that they filed with the court. Paragraph 42, upon information and belief, Montana Knife Company interfered with the improper purpose of obtaining Benchmade's confidential information that was protected by the confidentiality agreement. Paragraph 44 or 43, Montana Knife Company has interfered with improper means. Specifically, it conspired with unnamed co-conspirator to breach his fiduciary duty of loyalty in order to interfere with his confidentiality agreement. So they believe that they've suffered irreparable harm, and Montana Knife Company's actions have been willful and malicious. What? This lawyer on behalf of Benchmade is coming with shots. Entitling Benchmade to an award of punitive damages. They know not only do they believe that they suffer irreparable harm, but they also think they should get punitive damages as well. The second claim for relief, they want a jury trial. They want a jury to decide this stuff. The civil conspiracy. Benchmade incorporates paragraphs 1 through 45. They talked about the owing them a fiduciary duty of loyalty. And they are mentioning, let's see, let me go to where any new information here. Each of these took a last step and went further into the conspiracy, blah, blah, blah. Action will from punitive damages. Here's their prayer for relief. This is what they're asking for. This is what Benchmade is asking for. So I just skipped this section because they just basically summed up the conspiracy, which we just read through. So I don't need to read all that again. And I'm going to go to the prayer for relief. This is what Benchmade is asking for. Wherefore, Benchmade prays that this court will do the following: preliminary and permanent injunction relief prohibiting Montana Knife Company from employing or otherwise retaining the services of this person within 2 years of the last day of employment. This is a fancy way for freaking firing his ass, bouncing his ass up out of there. When it says an injunctive relief, that means they want the court to step in and to do the following things in this paragraph. That's the first thing they're asking for. The second thing they're asking for is an award of economic and non-economic damages to Benchmade in the amount to be proven at trial. They want economic. So what they're saying earlier is when they talk about the actual harm, the the actual irreparable harm. Non-economic is the punitive damages. They want both. They want it to be proven at a jury trial, where they said trial. I don't know if it's going to be a bench trial or a jury trial. An award of punitive damages and for such other relief as the court deems just and equitable, such as sanctions or whatever the hell the court were to come with, came on this day of the 15th of March 2024, signed by some attorney named Nikai Aldrich. This is what they're asking for. I'm like, hold up. That came down March 15th. I was a little dumbfounded. I was a little dumbfounded by that, because they are just, it's so weird to me. It's so weird to me that they filed this lawsuit. They're alleging, and we're going to talk about Montana Knife Company's response, what ended up happening. Make sure you hit that like button, because this was a lot of freaking research. So I'm just saying, put me in the algorithm by hitting that like button. Smash it, smack it, because where we go next is, this is how Donald Trump gets brought into the mix. We already talked about Donald Trump Jr. We talked about that, right? We talked about that. So what does Montana Knife Company do? What does Montana Knife Company do? So there's a couple of things that can happen. This is a history of this court case. So I go on to the U.S. The U.S. courts, right? And I'm looking like, all right, well, you know, what is the history? So they filed a complaint on, let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. They filed the complaint on March 15th. Then they do a corporate disclosure that I didn't download that. They do some summons issued, affidavit of service. So this is when Montana got served, or this is when they're saying they got served. Right? So this is March 25th. Finally, they have an attorney appearance. So the attorney for Montana Knife Company makes an appearance before the court. And this is where it gets interesting. On March 27th, the attorney for Montana Knife Company, they had to get a local attorney in Oregon, but they request to have an attorney appear pro hoc vice. They requested to have an attorney appear pro hoc vice. Do you know what that fancy Latin term for pro hoc vice means? That they are requesting that an attorney that does not practice law in Oregon be allowed to represent Montana Knife Company. Who do you think that they asked to be the lawyer that doesn't practice in Oregon? He's going to have a local counsel there, but he wants to be able to come in and swing for the fences from Montana Knife Company. How about Tim Palatori? Goddamn Tim Palatori. Do you know who Tim Palatori is? Tim Palatori represented Donald Trump in several different, I think specifically in some cases in Florida. This dude is a freaking beast of a lawyer. He has represented state governors, a 4-star admiral, a mayor, and a former United States president. I mean, who would you think that is? Montana Knife Company goes and hire Tim Palatori, and I don't know what happened between him being allowed to represent Montana Knife Company starting on April 1st and April 8th, but between Tim Palatori being allowed to represent, because the actual judge allowed him to represent them on March. He ordered that he's allowed to on April 1st. On April 8th, things changed. On April 8th, things changed, because all of a sudden on April 8th, I don't know what was going on, but I can tell you what Benchmade did next. And what Benchmade decided to do next is this. They decided to file with the district court, Benchmade Knife Company versus Montana Knife Company. Plaintiffs Benchmade Knife Company notice of voluntary dismissal pursuant to the federal rule 41. Pursuant to federal rule 41, Benchmade Knife Company hereby dismisses the action without prejudice, dated 8th of April 2024. What? Hold on. Wait. March 15th, you sued Montana Knife Company. April 1st, Tim Politori is now representing Montana Knife Company. He didn't file anything with the court. There is nothing with the court that is filed. He didn't file anything with the court. I'm reading this. I am not a lawyer, but I understand what some of this stuff is. On the 1st, he became their lawyer. On the 8th, they dismissed their own goddamn case. Now, he was talking to them, but he didn't actually file anything with the court. It is just interesting to me that you guys filed this on March 15th. And come April 8th, you have since shut it all down. Well, why would you do that? I'm a little confused. I'm a little confused. Why would you do that? So, one thing I will say is Tim Politori is not a slouch. Tim Politori is not a punk. Tim Politori has decided that, so the case has been dismissed by the plaintiff. Okay, that's fine. But you know what? We're going to go after some goddamn sanctions nonetheless because you seem to have wasted our goddamn time. Just because you dismissed the case doesn't mean that Montana Knife Company is just going to sit back on their hands. Did you believe that that was going to be the case? Tim Politori admitted pro hoc vice right at the top of the document. Now, they are still the plaintiff, and Montana Knife Company is still the defendant. But now the defendant's motions for sanctions. He's requesting an oral argument. That is where we are at right now, and I'm going to read through this document just a little bit. But before I do that, hit that goddamn like button, man. Hit that like button. It is so interesting. Like, I don't know what happened. I'm going to read some letters that Tim Politori sent to Benchmade's lawyer. Benchmade's lawyer. This is not a legal term. He seemed bitch-like. This is just my opinion. Okay. But it's just real weird how this shit kind of fell together. Okay. Now, defendant Montana Knife Company is known as defendant. He goes through and he explains what's going on, right? So, certifies that it's officially attempted to confer. So, defendant Montana Knife Company certifies that it's sufficiently attempted to confer with plaintiff's counsel by sending multiple letters and conferring on telephone multiple times. As we discussed fully in the declaration of Tim Politori's, defendant made multiple attempts to resolve this issue without success. So you thought you were just going to dismiss this shit and Tim Politori and Montana Knife Company was just going to be like, all right, well, cool. No. So first, they sent the plaintiff's counsel a letter discussing the exact motion. Then as counsel for the plaintiff had not responded to any communications by the defendant, nor had initiated any communications before filing the suit, defendant sent an initial draft of motion asking plaintiff to discuss. So they're saying that they wouldn't respond to us, that they asked them to respond to them before they filed a lawsuit and they didn't. Benchmade, why? What? So if you were about to file this lawsuit, this is just me speaking, and they attempt to talk to you first, why didn't you talk to them? I'm confused by that. Now, this is just being alleged by Tim Politori on a motion. We don't know what Benchmade's response is going to be to this motion. But at this point, the case has been dismissed, and now Montana Knife Company is going for sanctions. And we're going to talk about what sanctions they're asking for because they're monetary. So after sending a draft to the motion, counsel did confer on May 21st of 2024. I guess they have it scheduled for those dates because those are future dates. Or maybe he has these dates wrong. He must have these dates wrong because May 24th is next week. Okay, but we're just going to put that as maybe it's supposed to be April. I'm not sure. So this is what they're asking for. Defendant moves the court to award cost of attorney fees to the plaintiff unreasonable and vexatious multiplying these proceedings. They think that this is an unreasonable and vexatious filing. Then he states, he actually, in support of this motion, defendant states as following. So the case at bar was filed without even a rudimentary inquiry into the facts. They are coming back sniping right at Benchmade. They're coming right back and sniping at Benchmade. The case was filed without even a rudimentary inquiry into the facts. Plaintiff made false and salacious allegations of conspiracy and theft of proprietary information against a competitor, all for the purpose of preventing an unhappy employee from starting employment after his resignation within the time plaintiff's general counsel had advised. So what they're saying is this employee was unhappy. He wanted to start employment elsewhere. The plaintiffs, so Benchmade's general counsel said, you can't go work anywhere until after this time frame. So plaintiff maliciously used the frivolous filing to intimidate its former employee and force him to breach his own new employment agreement with defendant. Hold up. Wait a minute. Let me pump the brakes for a second. Plaintiff. So Benchmade, let's use the real wording real quick. Benchmade maliciously used their frivolous filing to intimidate its former employee. Pause. And force him to breach his new employment agreement with MKC. This employee, this dude sounds like he is conflicted. What is he supposed to do? They want a loyalty to Benchmade. They want this new founded loyalty to MKC, which it seems to be they have on a point. For this unjustifiable abuse of the legal system, sanctions are warranted. What? Now here's their factual background. We got the factual background from Benchmade, did we not? They were sniping in that damn motion. This is Montana Knife Company's factual background. Filed after the self-dismissal or the voluntary Rule 11 dismissal by Benchmade. They're not just sitting on their hands. Benchmade is a 45-year-old manufacturing company that specializes in folding knives. They're coming right at them. Defendant was founded in 2020 and is a new knife manufacturing company that specializes in fixed blade knives. I totally concur with that. Okay. In concurrence with them, I'm rocking today the Montana Knife Company, the actual Blackfoot, and the thing is freaking sexy AF. That's what they specialize in. I don't even know if they started making folders yet. They specialize in that type of stuff. All right. So they say they specialize in fixed blades. Defendant was in negotiations with the employee of the plaintiff who was looking to leave his job and work for the defendant. Now, stop here. I've been in negotiations with companies to leave and go work somewhere else. I've never just quit my job outright and said, all right, now that I don't have income, let's go look for a work. Some people do that. I've never done it. Every job I've ever done since leaving the Marine Corps, I've negotiated my way out of my old position, and I still didn't violate my non-compete. So what they were saying is Montana Knife Company was in negotiations with an employee of the plaintiff who was looking to leave his job and work for the defendant. At this point, at least from what I'm reading, right, this is just them open to discussion. Most of the time when you talk to a new employer, possible employer, they don't know what agreements you're under. They're just talking to you. This is the very infancy of it, but let's continue. Careful not to run afoul of any contractual obligations that the employee had to the plaintiff, defendant asked the employee to check on the status of any applicable non-compete agreements. Here we go. So I just mentioned that most companies don't know. You see what MKC is saying that they did? They said that they asked that employee to say, hey, listen, if we offer you a job or you're going to be violating a non-compete, okay, bet. The employee spoke to the plaintiff's general counsel, who informed that his non-competes are only enforceable for a 1-year period in Oregon, including his own non-compete. All right. So the employee saying that he spoke to Benchmade's lawyer, and this is what he told him. Defendant then tendered the employer an offer of employment, which acknowledged the employee may have to find alternative employment during the non-compete period. What does that mean? Say, listen, we're going to hire you, but you can't work for us. Apparently, you can't work for us for a year. Now, we don't know how true that is. We're in Montana, right? But what we're saying is you may have to find employment elsewhere, but we want you so bad. We're still going to offer you a job. Come on over here. You might have to work that year, but come on over here, right? So this is what they're saying. So when the plaintiff learned that the employee was leaving with an agreement to join the defendant after non-compete provisions expired, which the employee understood to be 1 year, it immediately filed an instant lawsuit without even a cursory investigation or inquiry into the relevant facts. Hold up, man. You're saying that now I'm going to put this specific sentence into Ebonics for you. Okay. Benchmade got butthurt. This is just what the sentence seems to say to me. Benchmade got butthurt when they found out that this employee was going to go work for MKC. This is what MKC is alleging in this motion. I don't know if it's true, but this is what I'm seeing here. When they found out that he was going to go work for them, they filed an instant lawsuit. It's like a freaking cup of ramen noodles. You put that bitch in the microwave for 3 minutes and 30 seconds, you got instant lawsuit. Instant lawsuit without even a cursory investigation or inquiry into the relevant facts. What? Benchmade say it ain't so. Okay, I want to see y'all's response to this, Benchmade. I'm following the docket. I'm waiting for your response, Benchmade. In the lawsuit, plaintiff alleged without any prior investigation that there was a civil conspiracy to steal the plaintiff's intellectual property. Hold up. Am I missing something? Because this is interesting. Now, what did Josh Smith say? What did he say earlier?
Like Benchmade is suing us right now, and my reaction to it is, bring it on, motherfuckers.
Oh, he said, bring it on. So it's weird. This is what they're saying happened. I see one person disliked this video. Is Benchmade watching right now because of the facts on the screen? Now, this is the facts that they are alleging. Are they true or not? I don't know. Okay. They're saying that you are accusing them of a civil conspiracy to steal plaintiff's intellectual property, as well as to violate a 2-year non-compete agreement. And then they have a footnote 1, which we'll look at in a second. Plaintiff's counsel made no effort to send a demand letter or an engagement letter in any communication regarding the matter prior to filing the lawsuit. Let's stop right here. Listen, I had a dog that we took to this place called Pet Paradise. It's called Pet Paradise. Here in the Dallas Metroplex, they have several locations. We took our dog to this location last year in December 2023. Or was it 2023? December 2022. And it was December 2023. So it hasn't even been a year yet. We took our dog there the day before Christmas Eve. We picked her up on the 27th or 26th. It was only like 2 days. When we picked up our dog, she was coughing. The employees that were at the front were wearing scrubs. I'm a wet behind the ear dog owner, right? And they tell me we have kennel cough going around. We think your dog has kennel cough. As I'm leaving, another dog walks out coughing. So I'm like, oh, my dog must have kennel cough. They say, if your dog gets worse, take your dog to the vet. Mind you, I drive a lifted truck. And when I left the facility, my dog jumped in my truck on her own. She wasn't coughing. I was like, all right, cool. So my thing is, 2 days later, my dog wouldn't eat, wouldn't drink. We finally made an appointment. My dog died on the way to the vet. We found out that the dog had the flu. But how did I find this out? And it wasn't kennel cough. I found this out because I wrote a demand letter to Pet Paradise, and I demanded certain things happen or I was going to sue them. I demanded that they did what's called a neocropsy. A neocropsy is a fancy word for a dog autopsy. I demanded their entire facility go under training. I demanded they pay for her cremation and get me a nice looking urn. I demanded that they write a letter of apology. And if they did all those things, I wouldn't sue them. They did everything. You know what that's called? That's called engaging before lawsuit. So what they're saying here is Benchmade did no such demand letter. What could they have done? They could have wrote a demand letter or engaged with Montana Knife Company, try to find out some underlying facts, figure out what really happened, write some things that they want to happen. It seems to be, according to this motion, you just filed an instant ramen noodle goddamn lawsuit. Maybe I'm mistaken. So the process server caught defendant completely off guard. Montana Knife Company is out there doing man shit. They might have been out there shooting skeet. They could have been out there freaking crafting bow and arrows. They could have been out there cutting some steak up. Here comes this damn process server just doing his or her job. Just knocks on Montana Knife Company's ranch's door. Has to go past all the cattle and say, here you go. Here you go. I got this from Benchmade. Now, I'm not making fun of the process server. I'm just saying that they got slapped in the dick. Like, hold on, what? We're getting sued. We've been on the docket. Never. There's nothing when it comes to federal civil cases with us. Benchmade's been on the docket over a dozen times. I think nearly 24 times, whether they're suing someone else or somebody suing them. Shortly thereafter, plaintiff and their counsel pulled the employee into a room, and Mr. Aldrich, that's their counsel, threatened to personally name him as a defendant in the lawsuit if he did not immediately sign a settlement agreement in which he would agree to breach his employment agreement with the defendant and sign an illegal 4-year non-compete solely specifically naming defendant. Hold up, bro. Hold up, bro. So this guy still hasn't left Benchmade's facility. He's got this offer from Montana Knife Company. He intends to go, I guess, work somewhere else for a year. And before he leaves, they pull him in the office and they try to make him do this. This is all alleged because I don't know if it's true, but this is some wild ass shit if it's true. So, although the employee did not agree to this illegal and extraordinary demand on information and belief, plaintiff is still trying to force the employee to agree to a non-compete that is potentially in violation of Oregon law, which could consequently force the employee to breach his employment agreement with the defendant. So it's interesting, man. So here's what happened next. Defendant's counsel sent a letter to plaintiff's counsel. So Montana Knife Company sent a letter to Benchmade on March 27, 2024, outlining the fatal flaws in the complaint and demanding that it be immediately dismissed. Now, mind you, Tim Paulatori has not been formally accepted by the court to represent them, but that doesn't mean he wasn't doing this stuff. And I have the letters to, I believe he was doing this stuff. So he wasn't allowed to submit documents to the Oregon court, but I believe he was doing this stuff. And if I get a chance to interview him, I'll ask him that question. Plaintiff's counsel never acknowledged this letter or engaged in communication. Instead, they waited 2 weeks and dismissed the plaintiff's complaint by the day before defendant's response pleading was due. Let me break this down for you real quick. Remember when I said March 15th, Benchmade filed the lawsuit. So according to this letter, Montana Knife Company's initial response to the pleading was due on April 8th. Or April 9th, rather. And Benchmade, before letting Montana Knife Company submit their response, they dismissed the case. Why? Why did you dismiss the case the day before Montana Knife Company was about to submit their formal response to your conspiracy allegation? It says, while this could have been easily mitigated through simple communication, plaintiff's intentional decision to ignore communication attempts and delay the dismissal forced defendant to expend funds to prepare for the response, which cannot become moot. Meaning, up until this point, from March 15th until April 9th, April 8th is when they did it, right? But from March 15th to April 8th, Montana Knife Company had to find a lawyer. They had to find another lawyer with Tim Palatori. They had to find an Oregon lawyer to represent them. They had to figure out, how they're going to respond to this. They probably had to pay a retainer. They started all this legal stuff. They had to talk to different people. They're spending money. And then Benchmade dismisses it voluntarily on April 8th before before Montana Knife Company files their formal response. And you think that's going to become moot? You think they're just not going to say shit? You think, oh, okay, it's dismissed. Let's get back to shoot and ski. No. This is where this Rule 11 sanctions came from. Not only do they believe that it was frivolous, but they want the damn money back. Therefore, in communications with counsel for plaintiff, Mr. Aldrich provided no factual response that could controvert the basis for this motion other than improper missives that he knows the judge. What he's saying is they were wondering so where did this come from? And we're ready to file our response. What do you think about this, lawyer for Benchmade, before we file our response? Well, I know the judge. What? You know the judge? Really, we'll get to that here in a second. That's what he says. Mr. Aldrich, this is Benchmade's lawyer, right? Mr. Aldrich separately attempted to claim that the draft motion contained attorney-client privileged information referring to the passage where the employee asked plaintiff's general counsel how long his non-compete period was. In other words, he wanted them to strip that out because this all goes in a public docket. This is the public docket, okay? I was able to download this document for 10 cents a page. So what Benchmade's lawyer is saying is you got to take that out because if you put that in, people can download it. People like me can download it. So that's what he's trying to say. Mr. Aldrich claimed that since there was no certification from the employee, he would file a motion to strike that as privileged. The next morning, Mr. Aldrich emailed counsel for the employee, threatening that it would be a breach of the non-compete to consult with the defendant on this litigation. Though this was clearly a false statement, it had the desired unlawful effect of intimidating the witness into declining to sign a declaration. At this point, the employee was ready to sign a declaration attesting to everything that had happened. And according to this motion, Benchmade's lawyer had the desired effect of intimidating a witness not to sign a declaration. I mean, listen, this is some heavy shit. This is some heavy stuff for, I've heard people saying don't bring a knife to a gunfight. Here, it's don't bring an Aldrich to a freaking Tim Palatori goddamn fight. You hear what I'm saying, bro? What is going on here? However, his counsel did say that if subpoenaed, the employee would testify truthfully. So then they talk about the legal standard, which I'm not going to bore you with this part, but they talk about the legal standard, what they can use to pursue this motion, right? And here's the argument. And we're almost done with this document. Here's the argument. Plaintiff filed a lawsuit without reasonable inquiry. This is the argument from Montana Knife Company to the court to get them to pay them the ducats, pay their fees back. Okay, this is their argument to the court, and they want to have this argument orally in front of the court. So first they have to file this motion. Benchmade has to respond to this motion, and then they may have one more opportunity to respond to Benchmade's brief. Then it will be fully briefed and it'll be ready for oral argument. So that's where we're at right now. All right. So Montana Knife Company goes first. Benchmade responds to this. After Benchmade responds, Montana Knife Company can respond again in writing. And then there's oral arguments. So this is where we're at right now. We're a couple of steps away from oral arguments. As outlined in the defendant's letter to plaintiff's counsel, this lawsuit was recklessly brought without even rudimentary investigation. Perhaps the starkest indicator of this is that the plaintiff made no effort to speak with the employee till several days after the complaint was filed. So you filed the lawsuit and then you read the riot act to the employee. That is, my opinion, ass backwards. Plaintiff filed its claims regarding the non-compete without performing any research into the enforceability of either the time or geographical scope. The claims regarding the plaintiff's proprietary information are pure fiction. The complaint is rife with conclusory allegations and void of supporting facts. It is time for Montana Knife Company to not only fire back, but other people are starting to catch strays. Kind of sort of this employee. Whoever this employee is catching some strays as well. But Montana Knife Company is now firing back and everybody can get it. In this case, plaintiff prioritized speed of filing over accuracy. Plaintiff recklessly raised these arguments simply to harass the employee by threatening to include the employee in an attempt to have him sign an illegal non-compete. They threatened, according to Montana Knife Company, they threatened the employee to make him a defendant as well, unless he signed another non-compete. Sure is funny that he's not a defendant on this case, right? So plaintiff noticeably declined to begin the legal process with a cease and desist letter. Remember I talked about that earlier? I sent a demand letter. to the Pet Paradise. And they're saying that they think it's funny that Benchmade declined to begin the legal process with a cease and desist demand, which is what most of the time is how this shit starts. That's how this shit normally starts. Anybody can write a cease and desist letter. You don't have to be a lawyer to do this. If any of you guys you feel like you've been wronged by somebody, you can just, write your own. You may not know how to do it, but you can write your own letter. Normally you just hire a lawyer and they do it for you. Or to accompany their complaint with an application of preliminary injunction, meaning they didn't put within a complaint a application for preliminary injunction, meaning that they wanted the court to immediately step in. They didn't do any of those. What they asked is, remember at the very bottom of Benchmade's complaint, they're saying that what we want is the court to do a preliminary injunction, injunctive relief, meaning that after it's all said and done, we want injunctive relief. What Montana Knife Company is saying is these two things normally happen first. First is a letter or demand letter. Second is immediately, if you feel like you've been wronged, immediately you say, we want this shit to stop right now. Benchmade didn't do either one of those two things. Additionally, if plaintiff believed that the employee was going to transfer proprietary information or violate his own non-compete, it would have filed a preliminary injunction. I just talked about that. What they said is, if you thought that it was going to happen, if you thought you were going to be immediately harmed, you don't wait around for the full court case to happen. That could happen at the end of 2024. It could happen in 2025. You're going to wait until the jury trial for injunctive relief. However, it did not. Plaintiff is relying on a factually invalid non-compete. I think I saw earlier in the chat. I think I saw earlier in the chat where Ironside just talked about the FTC coming through. We're going to talk about this here in a second, Ironside, because this is interesting. FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, just talked about non-competes. They just talked about that. Plaintiffs relying on a factually invalid non-compete. As further evidence of plaintiff's recklessness is the fact that the alleged, they said alleged, as if the document doesn't exist. Maybe it doesn't exist. As further evidence of the plaintiff's recklessness is the fact that the alleged non-compete is invalid on multiple bases. And then they cite some court case or something. I don't know what it is. Says the term of the non-competition agreement may not exceed 12 months from the date of the employee's termination. The remainder of a term of a non-competition agreement in excess of 12 months is void and may not be enforced by a court of this state. So they cited Oregon law. This is Oregon law. ORS is Oregon law. What they're saying is, remember earlier I said that the actual non-compete said 2 years. The actual non-compete said 2 years. The lawyer at Benchmade, when he talked to the employee, he said 12 months. So the employee thought he only had to wait 12 months. But when Benchmade found out it was happening, they just filed a lawsuit. They just filed a lawsuit. This is clear and ambiguous statutory restriction means plaintiff in Mr. Allred's efforts to intimidate the employee into signing a 4-year non-compete even more incomprehensible, an indication of bad faith. You know why they say it's bad faith? Because currently it's 2 years. Now you want it to be 4? Why? Why do you want it to be 4 years all of a sudden? Aside from unenforceable non-compete period, the restrictions in the current agreement are also geographically overbroad. This is something that I kind of would agree with. So when I signed my non-compete with the company I used to work for, the geographic location was, they talked about companies in the DC surrounding metroplex. I moved to Texas and they didn't take any action against me. They didn't believe I violated my non-compete. What they're saying is that they think that you can't just put America. They're saying that they don't think you can just put America for the non-compete. This is something that they're going to have to litigate in front of the judge, though. I don't know if this is something that's going to fly. As outlined in the complaint, the alleged non-compete defines territory as all of the United States and even country in the world, including all counties, cities, political subdivisions, so forth and so on. Yeah, it's pretty broad. That could be pretty broad. When confronted with unreasonable broad provision in non-competition, the court may enforce the covenant to the extent that is reasonable. So they're saying that they shouldn't enforce the entire non-compete because it was not drafted in good faith. So let's see what else we have here. The plain language of the alleged contractual provision amounts to unlimited geographic scope, which is unreasonable. If this case would have continued, they're saying if it would have continued, but it didn't because they dismissed it themselves, the court would have found this provision to be overly broad. This is especially true considering the employee's new employment with defendant would have been over 500 miles from his prior employment with the plaintiff. Bringing a lawsuit to enforce a clearly unenforceable non-compete both in time and geographical scope is unmistakably evidence of bad faith and warrants sanctions. They want some money, bro. They want some money, bro. Like they're not going to just let this fall mute. They're moot. They're not just going to sit on their hands. This is a charged paragraph right here. Plaintiff abused the legal process to unlawfully interfere with the defendant's contractual relationship. Remember I said that Benchmade is a litigious company? I don't know the allegations, but they have been in a lot of lawsuits since 2000. I talked about this earlier. Almost 24, whether it's been Spyderco or Gerber or, different specific individuals. They've been in a lot of lawsuits for patent infringement, for all sorts of shit. I thought because they've been in so many lawsuits, I thought they were publicly traded. I really thought that. I was like, oh, they must be trying to protect their shareholders. No, they're still a private company. So I'm just like, man, that means y'all's leadership is aggressive, Benchmade. Y'all's leadership is aggressive if y'all are always ready to sue somebody. So now Montana Knife Company is saying that the plaintiff abused the legal process by unlawfully interfere with the defendant's contractual relationship. The most damning evidence of bad faith is plaintiff's conduct outside the court proceedings. Hold up. Wait a minute. Hold on. Wait a minute. Extrajudicial things happening outside of the court proceedings. Hold on. Wait. So things happening outside of the court proceedings. I got to know more. I got to know more because this is so weird to me, because I know what Montana Knife Company said outside of court proceedings, and it seems pretty fair to me. Maybe I'm tripping.
I will be, but like Benchmade is suing us right now, and my reaction to it is bring it on, motherfuckers.
Oh, so that's all I heard Montana Knife Company say outside of the court proceedings. But Montana Knife Company is saying that Benchmade has had some conduct outside of these proceedings. Well, what does that conduct say? So say you. What is that conduct? So say you. Including attempts of intimidating an employee into breaching his contract with the defendant. First, through an attempt to force an outrageous 4-year non-compete, then through its continued efforts to get the employee to illegally excessive term efforts, which will believe continue to this day. They think not only did you try to get him to sign that agreement, you're still up into this day, and they filed this on May 3rd. The plaintiff never had a legitimate claim to the court to vindicate. So all Montana Knife Company said was bring it on, motherfucker. But according to Montana Knife Company, you're trying to intimidate an employee up until this day. That's outside of court, I would say. If this is true, I'm going to say alleged, right? Rather, plaintiff abused the legal process to gain a negotiating advantage over an employee and harmed the defendant's business. For reasons above, defendant respectfully requests the court to enter an order awarding defendant's costs, so that they have a fee to file this, which is $450, attorney's fees, together with such other and further relief as the court deems necessary. So they want the $450. They want the attorney's fees, which, did I mention that they got goddamn Tim Palatori, the former the freaking lawyer to the former president of the United States? Do you think that he's cheap? Do you think that he's cheap? He has represented Navy SEALs. He has represented President Trump. He has represented a 4-star admiral. You think he's cheap? They want to pay him. They want the money to pay him back. They want the filing fees and whatever else the court comes up with. You think that that's cheap? So up until this point, what has happened? March 15th, Benchmade files this lawsuit. April 1st, Pro Hoc Vice, here comes Tim Palatori. April 8th, the day before Montana Knife Company was supposed to respond to the March 15th filing, they self-dismissed the case. I don't know why. In my opinion, the judge should bring them in to figure out why the F did y'all dismiss the case. I don't know if he's allowed to do that, but I think he should have to, or make them respond. April 23rd, 2024, the Federal Trade Commission issued a final rule banning non-compete agreements with limited exceptions. What does that mean? So now the FTC comes in, completely unrelated to this case. They say that almost all non-compete agreements, even the one that I'm under, they're all invalid. You can't enforce any of them. Oh, really? Oh, really? Okay. That's where it kind of gets interesting. That is where it gets interesting. Okay. So the Palatori Group sent a couple of letters to Benchmade. Okay. The Palatori Group sent a couple of letters to Benchmade. And I think that these are some interesting letters. Okay. So first off, let us talk about what Montana Knife Company is considering doing. We're going to read the actual letter that the employee signed. The employee finally signed an affidavit. Remember earlier we couldn't get him to sign an affidavit? Oh no, the things have changed. Things have changed, young Padawan learners. Tim Palatori, declaration of Tim Palatori in support of the defendant sanction motion. So remember I said earlier, that is, listen, make sure you hit that like button, man. I know this can be confusing. Hopefully I'm explaining this well. Hopefully you're getting something out of this. Hopefully you're forming an opinion about Montana Knife Company and Benchmade based on, these are all alleged from both companies, but this is something that y'all can think about. Slap that like button. So this is now Tim Palatori signing. He's pinky promising to the court that these things happen. So earlier he filed a motion the same day. He also filed this the exact same day. And what he filed on this day is he's attesting to these things having happened. Okay. Declaration of Tim Palatori in support of the defendant. So Montana Knife Company's motion for sanction. I, Tim Palatori, declare all these things happen. We'll go through this real quick. I am one of the attorneys for Montana Knife Company in the above captioned matter. I make this declaration in support of their sanctions. I was retained after the lawsuit was filed and served on the defendant. Attaches the exhibit. He talks about the true and accurate copy of the letter I sent via email to Benchmade on March 27th. I never received a response to my letter. What? So he's saying that the lawsuit was filed March 15th. I sent a letter via email. They didn't respond to shit. That's exhibit 1. Exhibit 2. On exhibit 2, it's true and a correct copy of a letter I sent to the council on April 10th. Now remember, Benchmade dismissed the case on April 8th. They self-dismissed the case on April 8th. Did Tim Palatori say, well, all right, when I'm packing my bags and going home? No. They didn't give a fuck that they self-dismissed the case. He still sent a letter because things have got to be discussed. We got some shit to talk about. I sent a letter on April 10, 2024. In the letter, I detail out the lack of conferral and that my client had to expend attorney fees in preparation for filing an answer after the plaintiff's complaint was voluntary dismissed a day prior to the answer deadline. I asked to confer. He's asking them to confer. You know what he wants to talk about? Money. Hey, listen, time is valuable. Okay, you don't just get to dismiss this shit the day before we were about to respond and think we're not going to talk to you. Guess what happened? He didn't receive anything from that either. On April 20th, I emailed a draft of an attached motion to the counsel for the plaintiff and asked for a response as one last good faith attempt to confer with the pending motion. So listen, he's about to file a motion on May 3rd. Up until this point, he sent a letter on March 27th. He sent a letter on April 10th. Now he's sending them the draft. In my opinion, he is giving them so much deference, so much consideration. He emailed a draft to Benchmade and asked for a response as one last good faith to confer on the pending motion. He sent the motion as a draft for them to look at. The plaintiff's counsel finally responded that day. It's funny that he sends two letters. Neither one of them mention a court filing. But as soon as he sends the draft motion that he's about to file with the U.S. District Court in Oregon, oh, now you respond. That's interesting. I and my co-counsel spoke the following day on the phone with Mr. Aldrich. Two people on the phone. Now, they did this on purpose, in my opinion, because every state has different laws for recording phone calls or whatever. So to get around that, if you just put two people on the phone, one person take notes, let the other person know that two people are on the phone. That way you don't have to record the call. You don't have to worry about that shit getting thrown out later because every state is different. And I don't know where Tim Palatori is located, but if Mr. Aldridge is in Oregon, maybe you can't record it. So that's why I think they did that. He told us that his client had instructed him not to respond to the earlier outreaches. What? So Benchmade, listen, Benchmade, Benchmade, he's saying that Benchmade told him not to respond to the earlier outreaches and that he indeed intentionally refused to confer with my prior letters. Why? Why didn't you respond to the early? So you only wanted to talk in court? Like, it's as if y'all were old boyfriend and girlfriend. And it's just like, no, don't respond to that shit. We only talk in front of the counselor. That's how it sounds. That's what that sounds like. We need somebody to know what's really going on. That's what you sound like. If this is true, Benchmade, you say it sounds real zesty. It sounds real zesty. On the phone, paragraph 5, on the phone, he also admitted that he had prepared a prior version of the settlement agreement with the former employee and had included a provision into the settlement agreement which had prohibited the employee from working for a defendant for a period of 4 years. So he admitted to that shit, according to Montana Knife Company. And this is an affidavit from Tim Palatori. Excuse me. And Tim Palatori is making this affidavit as an officer to the court. He's signing this and filing it with a court on his own, you know, him being an officer of the court, him on his own reputation. When I informed him that he actually makes it worse, that this actually makes it worse, he just admitted to tortiously interfering, tortiously meaning that, you know, harm to the person, tortiously interfering in the employee's contract with the defendant. Mr. Aldrich responded that the plaintiff couldn't have tortiously interfered as they had no idea what the employee's agreement was. So when you tortiously interfere with someone, that means you're doing it with harm. It's a fancy word for the word harm. And so what he's saying is we couldn't have tortiously interfered with the employee's agreement with Montana Knife Company. We don't know what the agreement is. That's what the Benchmade lawyer is saying. When confronted with the fact that his claim was completely contradictory to all the allegations in the underlying civil conspiracy claim and the plaintiff's complaint, Mr. Aldrich admitted to the fact, and they put this in bold for a reason. Okay, now let me pump the brakes and read this again. When confronted with the fact that this claim was completely contradictory to all the allegations underlying the civil conspiracy claim, pump the brakes, Mr. Aldrich admitted the following: we have no idea. We've alleged on information and believe something, but we don't actually know what it is. Hold on, wait a minute. Hold up, wait a minute. Now, you know that there's two lawyers on the phone. One of them is taking notes. The other one is talking to you. And when he tells you that what you put in your filing on March 15th is completely contradictory to what you're telling me right now, you say to him, we have no idea. We allege on information and believe something that we don't actually know what it is. What? Paragraph 6. During the phone call, I also tendered a settlement offer to resolve the issue. So listen, now what he's saying is, I want a settlement offer. Okay, you need to pay Montana Knife Company this amount, whatever it is, right? So now it's time to talk about what are you going to pay Montana Knife Company as consideration. This is time to talk about consideration. Now, consideration, guys, can be given in the form of money. It can be given in the form of time. It can be given. Consideration is whatever the two parties agree to, and that's what you put in a settlement agreement. Mr. Aldrich said that he would follow the ethical obligations, but his client would not be willing to negotiate. Benchmade, what is going on, bro? I am like really confused because Tim Palatori is putting this in a declaration to the court. He's standing on an officer of the court. He's saying this with his own reputation at heart. Y'all aren't even willing to negotiate? Why? I never received a substantive response, excuse me. On April 23rd, 2024, the Federal Trade Commission issued a final rule which we believe resolved the non-compete and would retroactively invalidate Mr. Brown's non-compete. I informed the plaintiff's counsel via email that the FTC rule, our client's offer had expired and the defendants was requesting a counteroffer to try and resolve the remaining issues in dispute, including the present motion. So what Tim Palatori is saying is, we found out that the FTC believes that all non-competes are moot. And not only do we believe that retroactively affects the employee, but we think we're on an even stronger footing to negotiate and get this money. On April 24, 2024, I again spoke with Mr. Aldrich. on the phone. He had no counter offer. So at this point, he sent them an offer. We don't know what it is. He didn't disclose it here, but he had no counter offer. So I don't know if Benchmade told him not to make one. He had none, whatever. You know what he said? You know what he said to Montana Knife Company's lawyers? Instead, he made assertions that he knew the judge in this case and attempted to dissuade the filing of the motion on that basis. Up until this point, he had the draft motion, 2 letters. He had all these phone calls. He had this FTC rule, which he may or may not have known about. And his response is, hey, I know the judge, my G. You may not want to file that shit. This is me just adding a little bit of retort on it because I don't know if that's how he said it. This is what he said. I don't think that motion is going to go very far. I know Judge Simon very well. I just finished a 3-week trial with him. If that's how you guys want to get in front of the judge for the first time, then so be it. I can't stop you. I don't think it's going to be a good look, very favorable upon, but that's not my business. Listen, Tim Palatori is not an Oregon lawyer. Tim Palatori is working ad hoc vice. Tim Palatori is now hearing you say, I know the judge real good, my G. I don't think that motion is going to get very far. So what is this supposed to mean to Montana Knife Company's lawyers? That they shouldn't waste the paper because the judge, you're chummy with the judge. That's what you're inferring. That's my opinion. I don't know. Let's continue. Still, Mr. Aldrich shared no facts on what reasonable grounds his client had to file the present complaint or further basis for why he failed to inform defendant's counsel that plaintiff's complaint was going to be dismissed. Pump the brakes. The lawyer didn't share with Montana Knife Company why they filed the complaint, on what basis. They didn't inform Montana Knife Company while they dismissed the case. I showed you guys earlier, they just literally sent a 2-page motion dismissing the case. As of the date of this filing, I have not received any counter offer or facts which would defeat the motion. A few minutes after the call, Mr. Aldrich called back demanding that we remove the reference to the plaintiff's general counsel telling the employee that the non-compete was only valid for 1 year, that it constituted attorney-client privilege. They obviously didn't remove that shit because I just read it, did I not? Mr. Aldrich complained that the conversation was not about the employee's non-compete at all, but was rather about what the non-compete period for new employees would be. That makes no sense. So what you're saying is that the employee was lying. That's what he's trying to say. Mr. Aldrich claimed that the conversation was not about the employee's non-compete period, right? He's saying that the conversation was actually about what the non-compete will be for new employees. So you're calling the employee a liar. We'll see about that. I got another letter for y'all here in a second. So you're calling that employee a liar. He pointed out that there wasn't a declaration from the employee. So he would have the general counsel submit a declaration claiming an alternative narration of the conversation as a motion to strike. So they're saying at this point, the employee hasn't signed shit. How do we know he's telling the truth? Really? Attached is Exhibit 3 is a copy of a draft declaration we have prepared for the employee based on the information he has provided to us. However, when I sent it to his counsel, I was informed that the morning after my conversation with Mr. Aldrich, he had emailed counsel for the employee to threaten that he would consider it a breach of non-compete if he consulted with the defendant in this litigation. This interpretation is not consistent with the plain language of a non-compete, which is restricted. So what we're going to read is the draft language that MKC's lawyers had drafted up, sent, and ready to be signed by the employee. The employee just seems super confused. He has his own lawyer now. He's not sure what he should do. He hasn't signed this document, but Montana Knife Company has prepared this document. They're ready for him to sign it. And I don't see shit from Benchmade yet. Benchmade, I'm waiting for your response. I want to know, is your lawyer going to actually sign a declaration of what happened in that conversation? Because right now it's he said, he said. Both the timing of the false content of this threat have all the hallmarks of witness tampering. as Mr. Aldrich clearly wanted to prevent the employee from telling this court the truth about the events surrounding the frivolous lawsuit. This apparent unlawful design had its intended effect as the employee refused to sign the declaration. There you go. They created the declaration. The employee has still yet to sign it, and they believe because Benchmade is intimidating him. That's what they're saying. With his attorney saying that in the overall context of Benchmade's communications, my client is doing what is best for him and his family. When you make that type of sentence, when you make that type of statement through your lawyer, that means you're trying to distance yourself from both Benchmade and Montana Knife Company. This dude might start working at goddamn Home Depot. He might just say, fuck it, I ain't working for neither one of y'all. She did, however, confirm that if subpoenaed, I guess they meant to say he, because they put she first. So he says he did, however, or she must be the lawyer. She did confirm that if subpoenaed, he would answer questions truthfully, meaning that he don't want to sign no declaration. But if he gets called into court, guess what? Guess what? He's going to tell the truth about what actually happened that day. He's going to tell the truth about what actually happened that day. Listen, I don't know what Benchmade's response is going to be. I'm going to pull up the actual the letter for what the letter that they sent over that they wanted the employee to sign. The employee didn't sign it, but they still submitted this to the court. This is what they submitted to the court. Now, if we look at this, it's unsigned, right? But this is what they had prepared for the employee to sign, but they believe that the employee got intimidated and he didn't sign it. Okay, so this is the letter. I make a declaration to support the defendant's motion of sanctions. I was employed here until March 29, 2024 in the fall. So it goes through and talks about everything that the employee did in the fall of in the early fall of 2024. Even before I spoke with anyone from the defendant about a provision, I was considering leaving my employment with the plaintiff. Now, this is unsigned, but I'm going to still narrate what they believe happened. So he was thinking about quitting Benchmade even before he talked to Montana Knife Company. I knew I was subject to a non-compete obligation and therefore consulted with the plaintiff's general counsel about my obligations following employment. Now, here's the thing that I believe that the employee made a mistake is you had a non-compete and you talked to Benchmade's lawyer about your non-compete. I think maybe you should have talked to your own lawyer to figure out what you could and could not do. Because as soon as you start talking to them about the non-compete, I think that they're going to tell the upper management that they think that you're about to quit. But that's just my opinion. I spoke with the general counsel who said that they would investigate and get back to me. The general counsel then made an appointment on my calendar and then came to my office. I asked the general counsel specifically, if I left employment, how long would I be subject to the non-compete? Right? The general counsel informed me that non-competes in Oregon are subject to a 1-year enforcement and that the company's practice has been to follow Oregon's provision and that I therefore would be at a one year provision. Now, this is all alleged because he didn't sign it and it also hasn't been litigated in court. But if this is true, this kind of goes for what Montana Knife Company was saying. Other employees at the company have confirmed that the company only requires enforcement for a 1-year non-compete. Now, he signed a 2-year non-compete, but according to Oregon, according to what he's saying, is that they verbally told him that he was only on the hook for 1 year. Okay. Shortly after I tendered my resignation to the company, plaintiff's counsel, Mr. Aldrich, met with me in private. He told me that the plaintiff had filed a lawsuit against Montana Knife Company. He handed me a settlement agreement, which included a provision that I could not work for a defendant for a period of 4 years, and also drafted amendment complaint naming me personally, accusing me of stealing and providing plaintiffs confidential information to defendants, despite the fact that I never did so. He told me that I had 24 hours to sign the agreement and agree not to work for the defendant for 4 years. The entire encounter was unsettling, and I felt threatened by Mr. Aldrich during the exchange and the false allegations in the short period I was offered. I retained counsel shortly thereafter and were able to negotiate further time. Let's stop there for a second. This is all alleged, but what he's saying allegedly is that they found out that he possibly was going to be working for Montana Knife Company. They pulled him into the office to offer him a settlement. A settlement is a couple of things, right? A settlement is, this is how much we may pay you to leave, or this is what you can and cannot do. I don't know what the settlement agreement was, but the second part of that agreement was you can't go work for them for 4 years. This is what he's alleging. If this is true, this is damning for Benchmade. Like, this just makes y'all look like petty Roosevelt. This just makes y'all look like petty Roosevelt. Like 100% petty Roosevelt. So what is it? And when I get the response to this, I'm going to be going live again, because it's crazy, because I really want to know what actually happened. This is the letter that Tim Palatori sent to Benchmade. This is the letter that went unresponded to. Remember, I told you guys earlier, Tim Palatori sent 2 letters to Benchmade. He sent 2 letters to Benchmade. This is the first one that he sent. He got no response. Mr. Aldrich, I represent Montana Knife Company along with Brad Korupke of Oregon Meyer, and I'm writing you to regarding to recently filed complaint which accuses my client of intentionally interfering with contractual relations in civil conspiracy. This is, I think, when it gets serious. When you see Tim Palatori, Esquire, Tim Palatori, you go Google who he is. Do you not think that the shit is serious at this point? Do you not see that he used to represent a Navy SEAL and the former president of the United States, a 4-star admiral? Do you think Montana Knife Company did not spend a bag on him? Do you not think that this is not going to be going for that shit? So March 27th, the case still exists. They have not dismissed it yet. Okay. So he sends this letter on March 27th. This lawsuit you have filed is deficient both factually and legally, and we believe subject not only to dismissal but Rule 11 sanctions, which is what he filed on May 3rd. As you undoubtedly are aware, Rule 11 requires that before you file a lawsuit, an attorney must conduct an inquiry reasonable under circumstances. Yet it seems that you chose not to interview the relevant Benchmade employee until about a week after filing the deeply flawed lawsuit. A close reading of the factual allegations of the lawsuit quickly reveals the lack of any reasonable inquiry. The only allegations here are that MKC and the unnamed co-conspirator agreed that he would begin to work for MKC after a 1-year non-compete period. Yeah, where did y'all get that from, Benchmade? Like, where did this come from? Which is exactly what your client's in-house counsel informed the unnamed co-conspirator when he raised the possibility of leaving work for another knife company. Also, as to the claims about trade secrets, there is no factual allegations at all in the complaint beyond the fanciful and completely unsupported claim that upon information and belief, unnamed co-conspirator intends to use that trade secret and confidential information to benefit of MKC. There isn't even an allegation that unnamed co-conspirators shared the information with MKC. So what they're saying is, not only is there not evidence of this, but it just seems like you just pulled it out of whole cloth, allegedly. Is it true? I don't know. We'll see. But that's just interesting to me. That is interesting to me. So here we go here. We are aware that in an effort to shore up a factually deficient case, your client attempted to extort. Oh my God, that's strong. That is strong. We are aware that in an effort to shore up a factually deficient case, your client attempted to extort your employee, including false information against Montana Knife Company under the threat of frivolous lawsuit, along with a demand for a facially unlawful and unenforceable 4-year non-compete. This is clearly an illegal agreement in both terms of procedure under Oregon law, and we relish to see how Judge Simon would treat such an improper attempt in litigation. Your client did not attempt this extortion until several days after the filing of a frivolous lawsuit, and the employee refused the unlawful demands. MKC is firing shots back, sir. Do you not see how serious this is? Tim Palatori is out of Arlington, Virginia. Finally, I figure out where he's at. He's out of Arlington, Virginia. He's out of the DC area. Montana Knife Company is all the good lawyers in Montana. They decided to spin the bag on Tim Palatori. And now you get this. I believe that, this is just my opinion, Benchmade thought that it was not going to get this serious. And I'll give you my summation here at the end. The truth is that Montana Knife Company has no interest in any of Benchmade confidential trade secrets. Montana Knife Company is built on a dream of making affordable, high-quality knives that serve the needs of real working people. Shots fired. Shots fired. Serve the needs of real working people, as if they're trying to say that if you get a Benchmade knife, I guess I'm catching strays too, right? I'm catching strays too. He says our knives are for real working people, not yours. This is just me inferring. I don't know if that's what that says. The truth is that Montana Knife Company has no interest of any of Benchmade's confidential trade secrets. Montana Knife Company is built on a dream of making affordable, high-quality knives that serve the needs of real working people while employing hunters and fishermen in the community to create these American-made tools. Montana Knife Company has seen incredible growth and recognition in the hunting community and in the country through their quality handmade finished products. Montana Knife Company has seen tremendous growth through distinguishing themselves from the existing market through their own innovation, design, and quality, not by copying others. Shots fired. Further, they compete in different areas of the knife market. Benchmade is well known for the folding knife company. Montana Knife Company does not even make a folding knife. And it's not a competitor of Benchmade. In short, Montana Knife Company is successful because they are different from Benchmade. And aside from all the legal considerations, trying to replicate Benchmade in any way will be detrimental to what Montana Knife Company is great and different in the market for. Shots fired. Come on again. What they're saying is, in a cutesy way, we don't need to copy shit from you. We don't need to copy shit from you. And interestingly, although Montana Knife Company has been operating under the belief that the employee had a valid 1-year non-compete, the allegations in your complaint indicate that the non-compete at issue is void as a matter of law. Montana Knife Company is therefore very interested in litigating the enforceability of the non-compete in the interest of having the employee begin work much sooner than originally planned. In regards to this, I know that you have failed to move for a preliminary injunction. Now, think about this letter, guys. When he sent this letter, the case was still in litigation. They haven't dismissed it yet. So what Montana Knife Company is, not only do we think the non-compete is not valid, we want him to start next week. That's not what they said, but that's basically what they're saying. We think it's so non-invalid that we want him to begin working much sooner than originally planned. And we're ready to litigate that. That's what they're saying. Okay. In summary, all the lawsuit alleges is that Montana Knife Company hired an employee who was unhappy with Benchmade and agreed to respect the 1-year non-compete that was provided under Oregon law, which Benchmade's own general counsel informed the employee that he would abide by. Aside from unsupportable conclusory statements, there are no further factual allegations against Montana Knife Company. It is unfortunate that you chose to file a frivolous lawsuit before interviewing the relevant employee, sending a cease and desist letter, or making any effort to discuss the matter. As a result, there is a narrow window for your client to extract themselves from this position. If these frivolous claims are not withdrawn within, we will begin drafting a motion for Rules 11 sanctions. And then they did that shit. They said they will begin to draft it, and then they did it. What did they say? I forgot what he said.
Will be, but like Benchmade is suing us right now. And my reaction to it is bring it on, motherfuckers.
Oh. So that was his reaction to Benchmade's. Lawsuit. See, when I saw that clip, I saw it out of context. I hadn't seen any of these documents yet. But as I read these documents more and more, I understand why Josh Smith said, bring it on. I understand it. I get it. So that leads us to this letter here. Make sure you hit that like button, man. Make sure y'all smash that like button, bro. Make sure y'all smash that like button. So listen, I said that he sent a letter on March 27th. He got no response. The court was still, the proceeding was still happening, right? Now we're on April 10th. April 10th, Benchmade has dismissed the case themselves. But did you think that Tim Paulatori and Montana Knife Company were just going to sit on their hands? Did you think that Montana Knife Company was not going to go after their own ducats? Did you think that they were okay with just spending this money? Do you think Tim Paulatori is cheap? The answer to all of that is no, and no, they were not going to. Mr. Aldrich, as you are aware, I represent Montana Knife Company along with Brad. And I think Brad O'Hager is the Oregon lawyer, because you have to have a lawyer that's in Oregon. Even though you're at Hagvice, you have to have somebody sitting at the table that's an Oregon lawyer. So I think that that's who it is, right? Although our client is understandably happy that you have decided to dismiss the frivolous lawsuit, they had to incur expenses related to the lawsuit. As such, our client is consider filing a motion pursuant to U.S. Code 28. So they want attorney's fees. Additionally, our client has potential claims against Benchmade for the tortious interference with Montana Knife Company's contractual relationships. In other words, they believe that you filed a tort. So a tortious interference is mean a legal interference with our contractual relationships. So they're saying not only are we filing a motion for fees, but we also think that we have our own claim for tortious interference of contractual relationships. The contractual relationship was Montana Knife Company and that employee. Now listen to this next line, right? However, unlike Benchmade, Montana Knife Company would prefer to see if there's an opportunity to discuss and resolve before making such filings. Unlike you, we want to talk. Unlike you, we're willing to see if there's a way to resolve this without going to court. Unlike you, we're speaking like adults. This is all what they're saying, allegedly, okay? Any attorney or person or other person admitted to conduct cases in a court of the United States or territory, therefore, who so multiplies the proceedings in case unreasonable and vexatious may be required by the court to satisfy the personal excess costs and attorney's fees. This is what they meant when they cited that law. So here, it is unavoidable that a lawsuit was filed without basis in fact or law and without any inquiry reasonable under the circumstances. You issued no demand letter, nor made an effort to discuss the matter with Montana Knife Company before filing. You literally thought you were putting your dick on the table. Allegedly. You serve Montana Knife Company. They're out there freaking steering cattle and shooting skeet. And you just serve them from nowhere, allegedly, according to this. Though you were explicitly warned of the frivolity. Ooh, that's a word. I need to look that up. The frivolity of your claims on March 27th. This is the previous letter. You waited another 2 weeks to voluntarily dismiss the action, unnecessarily causing Montana Knife Company to incur costs of preparing a response. We told you that you didn't have shit 2 weeks ago, and you waited to actually dismiss the case. I note that consistent with your decision not to communicate with Montana Knife Company before filing the frivolous lawsuit, this lack of communication has continued, and the complaint was voluntarily dismissed 2 days before our response pleading was due without a response informing us that the lawsuit would be withdrawn. So earlier he said 1 day, I guess it was 2 days. So their response was due April 10th. They they dismissed it on April 8th. So up until that point, they're paying these lawyers. They're preparing paperwork. Paralegals are working. People are researching shit. People are preparing to possibly travel to Oregon. A lot of things are happening. And then you just dismiss it like we not going to say shit? Oh, okay. There is no reasonable excuse for causing Montana Knife Company to incur these additional costs other than Benchmade attempting to punish a competitor for hiring one of their unhappy employees. Ugh. Sir, Montana Knife Company is not stopping. They're not stopping. In addition to these 1927 sanctions, Montana Knife Company is also considering filing a claim against Benchmade for tortious interference. Ironically, the same claim that Benchmade falsely accused Montana Knife Company of. We're thinking about suing your ass for interfering with our contract with that employee. We're thinking about it. But in the meantime, we want our money for this employee fee, for the attorney's costs. As discussed in our last letter, your client threatened their former employee with a frivolous lawsuit, along with a demand for a facially unlawful and unenforceable 4-year non-compete. This demand for a flagrantly illegal agreement in both terms and procedure under Oregon law was designed to prevent the employee from fulfilling his obligations under his new employment with Montana Knife Company. This is the tortious interference sentence right here. What does that mean? Okay. Montana Knife Company may sue Benchmade for a number of reasons. It costs money to recruit somebody. The man hours in recruitment, the actual discussions. What if the person had some type of knowledge they chose not to fulfill in someone else? So now they have this actual area that could have been fulfilled by another human being and they didn't have that fulfilled. They could have had all these agreements put in place. They could have had housing scheduled. They could have had training already scheduled. There's so many costs of bringing on a new employee that you guys may have interfered with, and we're thinking about bringing an action against you. As we previously discussed, while Montana Knife Company was originally under the impression that the employee was subject to a 1-year non-compete, the allegations in your complaint indicate that the non-compete at issue is completely void as a matter of law. So you seem to be contradicting yourselves. As a result, Montana Knife Company is interested in seeking a declaratory judgment on an enforceability of Benchmade's non-compete agreements. It seems like they want this employee to start sooner than later. However, rather than we move forward with the filing of the above motion and complaint, Montana Knife Company wants to first attempt to work this out amongst the parties like big boys. Montana Knife Company would be willing to forego its claim in exchange for Benchmade agreeing that the employee may begin work for Montana Knife Company immediately. In that regard, I am unaware of what the current status is, if anything, in any discussions between Benchmade and an employee, but to the extent that any discussions are occurring in deal at all with the non-compete, Montana Knife Company is demanding to participate in the proportion of those discussions. We want to know what y'all are talking about. I hope that we can put the period of non-communication behind us and start to communicate towards a mutually beneficial resolution. In other words, you ain't been talking. You ain't been talking. We're hoping that you can stop not talking and put your big boy pants on. That is what they're saying. That is what they are saying. It's just an interesting thing going on. So, I mean, listen, guys. Listen, I'm following this closely. I have access to the court records. If and when Benchmade responds to the motion 11, I can report that out as well. What do y'all think about this? What do y'all think about this? So my summary as it stands right now is, to sum it up easily, March 15th, Benchmade files a lawsuit and for possibly a conspiracy for an employee to go work for Montana Knife Company. And March 27th, Montana Knife Company sends a couple of letters trying to resolve this outside of court. They didn't respond. April 8th, Benchmade dismisses their own case. April 10th, Montana Knife Company sends another letter like, what the F over? You're not going to respond to my old letter, and you think we're not going to come after our ducats for this lawyer fees? Oh, by the way, we may also sue you. Now here we are. May 3rd, they file a Rule 11 sanctions motion against Benchmade. This just, if these alleged things took place, this is not a good look for Benchmade. If these things which allegedly took place, this is not a good look for Benchmade. I made a lot of videos about Benchmade, a ton of the stuff on here, and it seems like people are coming to just kind of sniff that stuff out when it comes to this type of stuff, man.
But I will be, but like Benchmade is suing us right now, and my reaction to it is bring it on, motherfuckers.
I mean, they're saying bring this stuff on. They're not playing around, okay? They are not playing around. The ball is in your court, Benchmade. I am unsure what is going on. Franco says Montana Knife Company is coming out this looking great in his opinion. Yeah, that could be true. That could be true. He says, keep us updated, X. Yeah, I definitely will, man. This is interesting to me. I don't know what. I'm unsure where this goes next. My assumption is that Benchmade has a finite amount of time to respond to the officially filed motion. And I have access to the court proceedings. And my intention is to, let me log in real quick. Yeah, there hasn't been anything else filed. So if I look here, I see that this all started on March 15th. The last thing that was filed was a motion for sanctions by Montana Knife Company. I don't know when Benchmade has to respond, but I'm going to follow this. I'm going to follow this because I'm very interested to know when they actually make this response due back. So I'm going to keep up with the docket itself and see what is Benchmade, follow it back. Really relevant to the current issues, new laws are incoming to reduce the maximum amount of years a non-compete can. Oh yeah, 100%. The FTC just talked about that. I agree with you. And Brandon, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for being a goddamn member. Benchmade tried to pull a big company move and bully people with the threat of taking them to court, and they chose the wrong people to mess with. Listen, you might be right about that. You might be right about that. I'm not sure where this goes. I'm not sure how this all kind of like leads and ends up going. I just know that we now on YouTube are informed. The world is, I think I might even write about this. I might even have to write an article about this. It's just so interesting that it's just time after time after time, Benchmade does something. Whether it's the good, the bad, or the ugly. This is falling into that ugly space. This is falling into that ugly space. I don't know about that, man. Hey, listen, guys. Man, I'm not liking Benchmade more and more, says Branch. That's not, my goal is not to get you guys to like or dislike either of these two companies. My goal is to not bring any of that. But my goal is to represent the type of big boy moves that some of these companies are making. When you hire people like Tim Palatori to represent you, he lives in Arlington, Virginia. And do you think that this happened by accident? Who was Montana Knife Company talking to? Where do you think they got Tim Palatori's information from? They could have Googled it. Who is this? Donald Trump Jr. You don't think that he could have slid that point of contact across and gave them a powerhouse of an attorney to help them out? Do you not think that that's a possibility? I think it is. So it's just something that you got to think about, man. I'm going to follow this. Benchmade, if you're out there listening to me, come on the podcast, man. We could talk about this shit and talk about what happened. Montana Knife Company. I know y'all are more likely to, because Benchmade don't talk to me. I've only talked to them once. They're not a fan of some of the videos I've done. You know what I'm saying? They don't really talk to me. But Montana Knife Company, I fucks with y'all. So if you want to come on the podcast and talk about some of this stuff, whatever you can talk about, I got the document. So it's not like you would be disclosing anything. I've already got all the shit. You know what I'm saying? Let me know, man. I would love to have you on. Listen, guys, I got some shit to take care of. But I definitely got to go knock this stuff out. Make sure you comment on this video, share it across your social medias, and hit the like button on your way out, guys. I got some stuff to take care of, but we will speak soon.